In this step, I'm going to be breaking down every little part of the upper bar, which is the upper area of TradingView. And we're looking at it here on the web browser. So let's get started. Creating an account on TradingView is simple, so I'm not going to cover that. Where we need to move first is over here to chart. Go ahead and select a chart. There might be a button that says unnamed or interactive chart, something like that. For me, I have this new fresh chart without anything on it. This is bare bones and exactly what you will see if you type in BTC USDT. Up here in the upper left corner, those letters I just said to you are a ticker. A ticker will tell you, or rather pull up the market that you wish to view. BTC USDT is just one of the Bitcoin charts that I can look at. This is specifically on Binance. I can click here and I can also look at other popular stocks like Apple on the NASDAQ exchange or other available exchanges, and note that there are tons of them. If you primarily trade on Forex and you're usually trading on Oanda, well, you can set it to Oanda. So that way anything that you type in will always come up in Oanda, which is very convenient. If you're always trading on the NASDAQ stock market, well, it makes sense for you to select NASDAQ because that's where you're mainly trading. If you're a cryptocurrency trader, then you can select the exchanges that you trade on the most, and there are a lot of them. Binance is the most popular, so we're going to stick with that one. Note that when I type in 3 letters, it gives me the first 3 of a ticker. Because this is cryptocurrency, it's going to behave differently than it would if I were looking up a stock ticker. Let me show you what I'm talking about. If I type in BTC, there are actually some other stocks that have BTC as their ticker, like this one on the Canadian Stock Exchange. There are also other trading pairs. There's over-the-counter trading for something that's BTCS. There are lots of different options. You'll notice as well that Bitcoin can also be a market for trading. Here is a trading pair for Link against Bitcoin. This is easiest to understand if we're thinking about Bitcoin against the dollar or the pound. If we think about cryptocurrency like this, well, it becomes a lot simpler because we can see the dollar worth of Bitcoin. There are other more obscure cryptocurrencies that we can look at to find out what their dollar worth is. And depending on the cryptocurrency, there may be a market for those coins. If we were trading and looking up stocks that we're interested in, then we can just type in the ticker for a stock, and that's pretty much it. There's nothing really too technical about looking up stocks. But if I were to look for Forex trading, like the euro against the dollar, then I want to make sure that I'm typing it in a specific way. If I flip it, it will probably come up somewhere else and not be entirely helpful to you. Again, remember that you can always select the exchange that you would like to trade on to make things a little bit simpler and less messy. There are a ton of different options for you to choose from. There are a list of stocks. There are futures markets. There are Forex markets, cryptocurrency markets, indexes. There's a lot of information here on TradingView. For the purposes of this course, we're just going to be focusing on Forex, stocks, and cryptocurrency because that just keeps it simple. That falls in line with the 101 feel. When I click on Euro USD or EUR USD, it lets me view this chart. But you don't actually have to click up here every single time you want to look up a new chart. If I want to find out how the Australian dollar is doing against the Japanese yen, then I can type in AUDJPY. By typing it in directly with my keyboard, I can pull up any kind of ticker I want. then I just have to click it. Again, note that there are several different exchanges that have the same trading pair. And sometimes the prices will be slightly different. So make sure and confirm that you are on the correct exchange. We can also use TradingView to look up popular indices. Things like the NASDAQ 100, things like the Nikkei, things like the volatility index from SIBO. There are also cryptocurrency indices. These are helpful for us to see a general overview of how a market may be performing. For instance, I can look at the Dow Jones Industrial Average Index. By looking at this, I can get a better overall picture of how the market is. And we're not going to talk about the market in this current state because I'm filming this on August 25th, 2020, and it will likely be different the next time you look at this chart. But there are some indices that are helpful. DJI, which is the Dow Jones, SPX is a very helpful one. This is the S&P 500. Another one that many people monitor is the price of gold, and we're going to go right here to XAU USD. Other people, like myself, monitor the price of Bitcoin, and again, there are many different exchanges, so it's up to you where you would like to view it. Now, all of this is great. Being able to find trading pairs like this is so convenient, especially if I can just type in the trading pair right away. I don't always want to be looking at the 1 hour time frame. I know I'm on the 1 hour time frame because next to the stock ticker name, it says 1H. Also here in blue, it shows 1H for 1 hour. Of course, I could click these different buttons up here to show different time frames, and going out, or going to a longer time frame rather, will give me a bigger global perspective of how the market is performing. For instance, if I wanted to look at the performance of G&E, General Electric Company, which is a stock on the New York Stock Exchange, then I can see that G&E is on a pretty big downtrend. This is going to help me to get some good information about what I might want to do next regarding this stock. But there's a faster way. Coming up here and clicking takes a little bit of time. So if you're using your computer, all you need to do is use your keypad to type in numbers. For instance, if I want to look at the 30-minute time frame, just type in 30, and it automatically goes to 30 minutes. If I want to look up the 4-hour time frame, just type in 4H. If I want to look at the 3-day view, 3D. If I want to look at the 4-week time frame, which is basically 1 month, then I have a good perspective of this. And of course, we can also go to the monthly view as well. And this will give us the biggest zoomed out experience to view a chart. If there are time frames that you know that you're going to use regularly, you can come here to this little pull down menu and open these up, and you can set favorites. For instance, if I know that I'm going to be using the 5 and the 15-minute time frame a lot, I can create a favorite, and this way it's going to show up here. If I'm not going to use 5 minutes but the 7-minute time frame, note that 7 minutes was now added to this top bar for easy clicking convenience. You can have, I believe, up to 6 different favorites because there's only so much space up here. So I'm happy with this. I like knowing the 5, 15, 1 hour, 4 hour, 1 day, 1 week. That's pretty good for me. It may be different for you. And that's the nice thing about TradingView is that you can customize it for yourself. Next up are the bar styles. There are many different bar styles to choose from. The most used bar style is the candle bar style. Candles were derived from Japan back in the 17th century. They devised a very clever system as well as a whole candle reading or candle pattern technique that is going beyond the scope of this course. What you need to know about candles is that there are 4 parts to every candle. Let's zoom in to this one up here so we can get a better picture. Here at the top of the candle is a very thin line. This is called the upper wick or the upper shadow. Note that this candle's color is green by default. That means that the fat part at the top, or the wide part at the top, is the close of that candle, whereas the lower wide part is the open for this candle. And below the open for this candle is a lower wick or a lower shadow. The red candles are the opposite of green candles. Opposite as far as the open and the close. We read red candles like this: open at the top, close at the bottom. When we look at the prices for these candles, looking at the upper wick, upper body, lower wick, what we get from this is displayed next to the ticker with the OHLC numbers or values. O stands for the open, H is the high, L is the low, and C is the close. As you're looking at the price of candles, you can use this guide up at the top to quickly identify what these prices are. Because we're looking at the 6-hour time frame, there is a lot of space in between these candles. Let's go to a smaller time frame. So now we're looking at the 5-second chart. Yes, I can look at the 5-second chart. So here we have the live price. The price is currently here and it's moving too quickly for me to really say what's happening. But every 5 seconds, it's printing a new candle. Note the previous 2 candles were red, and now we have a green one that started down here and ended up here. Vice versa, starting up here, ending down here. I would not advise trading on a 5-second time frame, mainly because you'd probably have a heart attack. This is a very, very fast time frame. Depending on what you trade, there are preferable time frames that will make a lot more sense to you. But we're not going to discuss that right now. So, typical candles operate and look this way. There are other candles that we can use as well, or rather other bars. To the left of the candles, I have Heikin Ashi. And yes, that's actually how you pronounce it, Heikin Ashi. This is again Japanese. And the difference between Heikin Ashi and the typical candles is that Heikin Ashi are looking at the overall trend. You'll note right away that we have a sequence of red candles happening here, but when I switch to the normal candles, there is one green candle here and one green candle here as well. Notice that when we move up, there's green and some red and then lots of green, but there's one red at the top. However, when I look at it with HA or Heikin Ashi candles, it's going to show me more fluid movement. The benefit of using Heikin Ashi candles is that you can see the strength of the trend. Where if you are using the typical candles and you see a red candle, even though you are on an uptrend, you may get spooked out of the trade and decide to close it prematurely. The benefit of having HA or Heikin Ashi candlesticks is that we can see the continuation of the trend. So that way we don't get stopped out, but we can get all of those pips. So that way we know, the trend seems to have stopped here. And then when we see the trend starting again, we can jump back in and trade the trend until it corrects. I'm going to switch to the daily time frame now to show you another type of bar. And this is Renko. Renko blocks are very interesting. Note that there are still upper and lower wicks or shadows, however you wish to call them. But this is an even more exaggerated visualization of a trend. If we are to look at the differences between the three, we'll start with candles first. Here we are, March 10th. I'm going to add a line just so we can see a time frame and to see how it's performing. Now I'm going to switch to HA or Heikin Ashi. We can see immediately the difference, seeing this uptrend is all green. And now we're going to look at Renko blocks. Now all of a sudden, our chart really moved over to the right. That's because Renko uses something called average true range. We're going to go to the settings and we're going to look at the Renko blocks. The default ATR length is 14, and if you want to study up on this more, go for it. I'm not going to explain all the intricacies of this, but if you do want to change it and adjust it, you do so here in the chart settings. We're going to come back to this in a little bit. There are also other simpler ways to view a chart, like looking at a line, looking at line with an area that looks very fancy, but it doesn't give us as much information. And there are also these other fancier, different types of bars. To be honest, the bars that I use the most are plain old candles. The reason for this is because the candles that you choose will highly affect the indicators that you select. We're going to get to indicators in a minute. So as you're starting to use TradingView, stick to the regular candles. You're going to have better success with it. And after you learn how to use Heikin Ashi properly, or even Renko properly, then you can start to explore. But for now, we're going to stick with candles. Just like with time frames, we can favorite all of these different types of bars or lines, so that way it's how we want to see the chart. The next area at the top is the compare button. This is interesting because you can compare the chart or the ticker that you're looking at to another chart, or even overlay or add a symbol to the chart you're looking at. This is beneficial in several ways, and I'll show you why. First, let's look at compare. When we use compare, it gives us an idea of how the stock, the commodity, the currency is performing against different indices and also against each other. We're going to make it simple and just look at the S&P first. Just to spice it up, we're going to choose a different ticker. We're going to choose Johnson & Johnson on the New York Stock Exchange. The benefit of using the overlay or compare feature is that we can see how has Johnson & Johnson performed versus the S&P 500. This is great because we can see the representation of performance in percentages. Now, we had a pretty nasty crash here in March of 2020. That was pretty rough. But we can also see how it's recovered against the S&P 500. The volume is in my way here at the bottom. I'll talk about that when we get to indicators, but for now, I'm going to hide it by clicking this eye. Here we go. We can see here that Johnson & Johnson rebounded much quicker than the S&P 500 did. It actually shot up 15% compared to the S&P at negative 10% on this specific date and time of April 27th, 2020. But as we continue here, we can see that finally the S&P 500 is outperforming and off the charts basically compared to Johnson & Johnson. Note that when I scroll up, I am zooming out on the chart, and when I scroll down, I'm zooming in on the chart. If I'm zoomed in too far, we're going to see that Johnson & Johnson is not performing as well as the SIBO from this range of April 17th to August 24th or 5th. But if we zoom out a bit more, we can get a better picture. And they're pretty much the same right now, neck and neck. But if I were to choose a random stock ticker from, let's find a pharmaceutical. Here we go. A company I know nothing about, but we're just going to see how pharmaceuticals are doing right now compared to the S&P 500. So yes, there was still a sell-off in March, and it looked like this was going to do very well. There was a ridiculous pump right here, and here we are now with the Phase Biopharmaceuticals Inc. performing negative 43% compared to the S&P performing at 15%. So just to give you an idea, that's one way to use it. But let's use this on something like crypto. I want to see what the correlation is between the price of cryptocurrency on the daily chart to the S&P. And I can see that crypto has outperformed it by 56% given this range. I could also look at a more specific metric, like looking at the 1 year time frame. And now I can see over the year, it's actually performed just 7% better than the S&P currently. I could also take a look at the 6-month performance as well. Using these metrics down here at the bottom, we're going to talk about later on in the course, but just to give you a preview of how this can be used and measured, it's useful. But if you zoom out too far, you may get information that will seem skewed. So instead of the S&P, I'd like to look up my own symbol. I want to see how cryptocurrency, specifically Bitcoin, is correlated with gold. So I type in the ticker for gold, XAU, USD, and now I can see that they are moving in generally the same direction. Cryptocurrency is much more volatile than gold is. Gold did have a dip, but we can see it's still moving up. One thing that's interesting is we can see that there are some points here, like the rise in gold, mimicked or actually led Bitcoin to move up. And gold had a move up and then it fell down, where we can see this happening with Bitcoin later. Note that there was a peak up after the drop, so it's possible we could see another peak up if Bitcoin is mirroring or following gold in this manner. I'm going to remove this and go back to compare. And instead of comparing Bitcoin to the S&P 500 or gold, now I want to overlay another chart on top just to get a better picture, not of the prices, not of the percentages, but of the performance. So I can see, are there any correlating patterns? So let's go ahead and look at the Dow Jones Index. And now notice that the DJI is priced here on the left-hand side. This is helpful because now we can see both, and I can also change in the settings the style. It's set to align, but maybe I want to see bars for this. Maybe I want to see candles. And now I can change all of the colors for my candles. This is helpful because right now I'm looking at candles that are basically the same thing. So I can choose funny colors that will show differently to what I'm looking at on the chart. So now I can see the Dow Jones Index is now this blue and purplish color. I don't really care about the color so much as the patterns that I'm seeing and what's happening here, and is it leading, is it following, what is it doing? For cryptocurrency traders, maybe you want to see how is your chart performing against Bitcoin. I'll type in a currency here, Link, and we're going to use Binance. So we can see here that Link has had some exceptional news and lots of developments. There's lots of buzz with it. I'm not endorsing Link in any way, but this is just to show how has Link performed after the crash and moving up since then. It has had an incredible rally and it's doing extremely well, even though Bitcoin is sagging a little bit. So this is helpful to see, are there patterns? If Link is moving up, but we see Bitcoin falling down, is there a pattern? When Bitcoin moves sideways, what is Link doing then? So these kinds of investigative tools are what make TradingView so interesting and powerful to use. The next stop up here at the top are the indicators. Note the hotkey for this is /, which is right next to the right side shift. There are a lot of different options. Here in the built-ins, there are almost 100 different built-in indicators that you can use to make educated decisions on the charts that you're trading. There are too many to cover in this video, but I will show you a couple of the ones that will be useful and interesting to you. The first one that's very simple to understand is volume, and we're looking at it already. What do you mean? Well, it's actually right here. All of these bars down at the bottom are the volume bars. These bars correlate to the color of the candle, the corresponding candle, meaning that if we have a green candle, then the volume below will show green. Here in the settings, we can adjust the style of the volume by showing it or hiding it. We can also change the color if we wish. Sometimes I like to go white or basically gray. And the reason for this is because sometimes the volume clouds my vision and I see the colors of the volume and that tells me that, oh, there's lots of selling pressure or buying pressure, when in reality, it's really the candles. I've changed my colors, but if I don't want to actually keep these colors, here on the bottom left, I can reset my settings and it will go back to the default settings. If I enjoy the look of nice turquoise blue, or I don't know what that is, stone blue and hot pink, or that's really ugly. But if I like this, then I can save it as my default settings. I don't like that, so I'm going to reset my settings. If I do not want to see this indicator, I can hide it. And if I'm done using it, I can remove it. I also have the ability to double click on the indicator itself and it will bring up the settings. I don't actually have to go up here to the gear every single time. Another thing I can do is with this more context menu, I can do lots of different things. I can move it to a new pane above, so the volume is now on top, or I can move it to the existing pane below where the price lives. I can also view this and other indicators I have in the object tree, which is on the right side. We're going to get to this in the course, but not now. I'm going to quickly access my indicators by pressing the slash key. And I want to show you another one that's pretty simple to use and understand. It's the Relative Strength Index, or RSI. When I add the RSI, it automatically adds it to the lower pane. If this feels like there's too much room on the RSI, I can move my mouse between these two panes and click and drag up and down to resize. I can double click on the RSI indicator and bring up the settings, or I can hover my mouse to the gear icon to show the settings. Here in the settings, I can change the color of the RSI line, as well as the numbers of the upper bands. These default settings are just fine. I can even turn off the background if I don't really need to see it. Note that I am, by the way, in dark mode, if you haven't noticed already. If this is not really good for you and you'd rather have it be blinding white, then you can click the hamburger button. Yes, that's what it's called. And you can come down here to dark color theme and disable it. And now I'm awake. I wasn't awake before, but wow, I'm really awake now. No, I don't like that. I'd rather have it be on dark mode. If I want to add another indicator on here, I can simply press the / go to built-ins, and I'm going to add a simple moving average. Just right here, moving average. And the moving average is helpful because you can see the average price over the last couple periods. There are lots of different ways to use moving averages, as well as adjusting the length, as in calculating the average movement of the price for the past 27 periods. And this depends on the time frame we have. There are lots of different lengths to use. I'm not at liberty to really discuss and go into all the nitty-gritty bits. This is just to get you started. Note that there are many different moving averages. There's the simple moving average, The exponential moving average, there are lots of different calculations for these, and that's as much as I'm going to get into for this. If I'd like to merge this into a new panel, then I can have it be in its separate pane. That way I can see a general movement of the price. This way it may not cloud my vision as much if it were connected. If I'd like to just view the RSI and I don't want to look at the chart for some reason, I can double click this pane and now the RSI is full screen. Note up here in the top right, it has this cube, I guess it's a pane with the sides are open. Just click that or double click to resize the pane. And in the same way, if I want to make the chart of Bitcoin the biggest thing possible, double click here in the center and I'm good to go. If I want to move Bitcoin around and put it to the bottom, just do this and I can do a little dance with my charts. There we go. Once I'm done with this, I can remove my indicators and I can go on with the rest of this tutorial. In indicators, TradingView has offered something beyond just built-in indicators. As it says here, new, there are actually candlestick patterns, which are very cool. This is a study all in itself, and this is based on the Japanese candlesticks that we're looking at now. And there are different configurations or patterns of candlesticks that make it very, very powerful as long as you know how to recognize those patterns. I'll click Doji, and when I click Doji, it's going to identify all of the dojis. Dojis are derived from a skinny body and a long upper wick and lower wick. Note that you can also hover your mouse over the D to read more about what a doji is. It's extremely useful. For those of you that are more interested to learn more about Japanese candlestick charting techniques, I highly recommend the book by Steve Nissen. You can get it on Amazon. It is a great resource to learn how to use Japanese candlesticks. And you're going to get a ton of information from this book, as well as check-ins at the end of each chapter. I've read this book. I've used it. It's fantastic. It's a really good book. Continuing on with our tour, we also have a laundry list of a public library, and the public library is basically anyone who has published an indicator and they've made it available to you. So these are all free to use. I don't know any of these people, and there are people at the top, so it seems that this indicator is the most popularly used. Therefore, maybe it works really well. I don't know, maybe it's been around the longest. So once you learn how to use this indicator, then you can have a better understanding of how to trade with it. Now, proceed at your own risk, because there's no guarantee that these are all incredibly useful, depending on the chart you are working on. You could also write your own scripts, giving you the ability to use Pine script and also testing out your strategy to see how it works. Not going to get into that, but it's okay. You're not going to miss out on anything there for now. So we're going to come back again. And then there is something cool called the volume profile. This one is available only if you have a paid subscription to TradingView. But the benefit of this is pretty obvious. It allows you to see the action of the volume historically. And what it does is it shows you something called a point of control, which is the highest node. I'm giving you the very brief explanation of this. And then there are gaps here. And when we have these gaps, that means that there are pockets where if the price breaks below, then it'll probably fall into this gap. This is the basic introduction of how to use VPVR. Again, I'm not going to go into a lot of these indicators and really talk about them too much, but just explaining the volume profile, volume range, which again is only available with a paid subscription. There are also invite-only scripts, and the TBO, which is the trending breakout indicator I use for all of my trades and teach in my courses, except for account builders. This indicator is the best. It's the best indicator I've used for many reasons, but you will not find this in the free library. In order to use the TBO, you have to either take one of our courses to learn how to use it, or you'll have to pay a subscription fee month to month to use it. I highly recommend it. It is incredibly useful and very powerful. And I don't have time to go into it, but just saying it's a great indicator. But this is an invite only indicator, so you won't find it in the list of free ones like I have it. So just explaining. But again, cannot recommend this indicator enough. It is very nice. Next up, we have the financials box. The financials will show us fundamental metrics for stocks. There is a laundry list of different things to look at, like income statements, like balance sheets, cash flow, ratios. This is great for really analyzing your stocks, Warren Buffett style, except you're not actually reading all the articles and things like that about these different stocks like he does. So this is just a quick and dirty way to use financials to primarily for stocks to know how are they performing. And I'll tell you that the 6 most basic ratios to use when you're investigating these stocks, I actually have saved here. I'll show you what it looks like. So the basic earnings per share, which is shown down here below, and this is a ratio that people use, as well as debt to equity ratio, price earnings ratio. All of these things will help you make a better decision about whether to invest into a stock or not. I do not trade stocks, so I don't use this. But again, the 6 that I do know are the most popular financials to use are these 6. The information for these is down below if you're watching this on our course portal, and you can quickly copy those down and add them as favorites of your financials in TradingView. They're also available in the free guide that we have for this course. Next, we have the indicator templates. These templates are going to help us get a quick view of moving averages, all by clicking just one button. Or I can look at things like various oscillators and how they're performing in regards to the stock, commodity, currency that I'm looking at. There are lots of really cool things that I can do with this. Note that instead of going one by hitting this X, because I've just loaded it, I can also press Command Z to undo my selection, just like a word processor. Actually, you can use things like copy, paste, cut, the delete key, to just like you would for writing a message or an email. You can use that as well here in TradingView. We've covered a lot so far, and we still have more to go, so hang in there with me. Next, we're going to look at the alerts box. The alerts give us so many powerful options where we can set different conditions that have different dependencies. For instance, if I add an indicator, I've added the TBO just to show you how alerts can be incredibly powerful. The condition could be anything that you see on your TradingView screen. It could be the price of the stock or currency that you're looking at, as well as the indicators you have, be it volume or even like this invite only indicator, the TBO. Using this, I can say, alert me when Amazon prints an open long, or it looks like the next thing it will do is to print an open short. When this alert triggers on the open short symbol, then I'll know, I can start to short Amazon now. Wouldn't be a good idea to start shorting yet, and that's what the TBO does, is it gives me an idea of the trend. So I can also use Amazon itself crossing different values or different indicators. For example, I want to know when the price of Amazon crosses the TBO fast line. Well, I can do that just like this. Next, there are 4 different options: only once, once per bar close, once per minute. Most of my alerts I use once per bar close. The nice thing about once per bar close is that I have confirmation that this signal is actually true. Whereas with once per bar, it could happen but it may not be a sure thing yet. This sounds a little bit gray, I'm sure, but once per bar close is going to be really good for most people. And if you don't have access to that, only once should be fine. You just need to be alerted once. Next thing to do is to set your expiration time. I have the option to use open-ended because I have a premium subscription to TradingView. But even without a premium subscription to TradingView, I can choose an expiration time. In some cases, this may actually be more beneficial. But for now, I'm just going to leave it as open-ended just because I like the checkbox. Next, I have a couple of different options. I can send a notification to the app on my phone. I can send a notification here on TradingView, as well as send myself an email, and it will send an email to my registered TradingView account. I can also send an action to a webhook. Now, maybe you don't know what a webhook is, but essentially it is a way for you to transmit information using JSON, which is a programming language. Now, this sounds like a bunch of nonsense, I'm sure, but this is actually incredibly beneficial because I trade on 3 commas. I can use TradingView alerts to tell 3 commas bots what to do. Turning on, turning off, take profit, doing lots of things. The webhook URL option is fantastic, and I highly recommend checking out 3 commas if you haven't yet for crypto trading. It's great. There are also other actions like playing a sound, which you can customize, or send an email to SMS. We're going to just close that for now. The message box provides a lot of options. Everything here is self-populated by the choices that I have. Another thing I can do is use special placeholders. And if I click this question box, it's going to show me all these different things. So when I type in exchange, ticker, price, all this, it's going to shoot out this on my alert. It's going to contextualize all the information that I want to see and want to know. I use this. It's very beneficial, but it'll take some research, and we're not going to get into that. The next thing to do is to create the alert. Once we've created the alert, it's viewable up here in alerts, but we're not going to get to that point yet. We're almost there, but we're not there yet. Our next option is bar replay. This is really cool because we can see how the price has reacted in quote unquote real time. If I click right here on 31st of March, I'm going to see how has the chart of Amazon performed since. The benefit of doing this is that I can play it back. I can see how it reacted day after day. I can also make some decisions about what I have done. How does it change? How do the candles interact with each other? Here's one way that you could use this. And we're jumping ahead a little bit to the charting. But if I were to use some charting techniques to see what do I think will happen next? Well, I can see that it seems to be closing up here. Let me just do this real quick and dirty. Just like that. It seems to me that I see this pattern taking shape, which is a bullish continuation pattern. We already had price movement coming up. And even though it's not perfect, I think the price is going to continue up. So I can see, was this drawing correct? And how did the drawing play out? We're just going to speed this up a little bit. And then boom, it busts out of that bullish continuation pattern until we finally arrive at our current day. And here we are. So the benefit again of doing this is to test out your charting skills, your analysis skills to see how has this worked out. It's also useful when you have indicators to see how did this work with this indicator. This indicator said such and such. Did it actually show me a good entry or was it a poor entry and why? So this is a way for you to practice your skills on your entries and exits. It's very useful. Next to replay, we have very simple options here for undo and redo. So I can undo my scrolling or I can redo it. Note it's Control Z and Control Y, so I can just use my computer keyboard to do both of these actions, like zooming in or zooming out. Now that we've finished this left-hand side of the top bar, now we're looking at the right side. This is going to go pretty quick. There isn't that much more to cover, but we're almost done. Admittedly, the top bar has the most information and the most widely used parts to it, so that's why this has taken some time. This part is really cool. When we click on Select Layout, depending on the subscription you have for TradingView, you can create up to 8 different grids showing 8 different charts. There are different ways to configure this. You'll note that I have the same symbol on all charts, but I can actually coordinate it so that way by clicking symbol, anytime I type in a new symbol, it's going to update the symbol on every single time frame. If I want to have the crosshair be synced, then it's going to be synced. I can also sync drawings across different time frames. The benefit of doing this, maybe not on a 2x4 scale, but maybe like this, is I can look at the performance of Bitcoin versus Ethereum and see how have the two corresponded both on the daily time frames. Before I can look at Bitcoin and Ethereum, I have to undo it showing the same symbol. So now I'm going to look at Bitcoin on the top with Ethereum on the bottom, both of them showing the year-to-date time frame. Again, this is useful because I can see how quickly the price of Bitcoin recovered compared to Ethereum, but also how much more Ethereum grew over this time frame than Bitcoin has. I can also sync the interval and the time between charts. Having this layout is really useful, but if you can't save it, it's not so helpful. And that's where we come over here to the option for saving or managing your chart layouts. I have lots of different chart layouts, all of them for different purposes. I apologize that I can't show you some of them because they're private, but I will show you the one that I use the most. Note that when I click on this, it will show my last drawings. It will show all the indicators that I have on my charts. It'll also have it set up the way I like to view charts, which is 30-minute, 1 hour, 4 hour, and 1 day. This is handy for cryptocurrency trading, and this is my preferred way to do it. So that's why I have it set up this way. I also have it renamed Moonin, so that way I can quickly access it. And you can also type your chart layout into your browser and it will show up as Moonin or my custom chart or the best chart layout ever. And then you can just click that instead of having to go back to TradingView.com, finding your layout and accessing it that way. It's much more convenient. When I'm using the multiple layout option, there are a couple of things to note here. And we're jumping ahead to the later steps, but this is helpful to see that we can actually use option click, and that way we can full screen one of the different time frames. I can also press tab to cycle through the different time frames to get a better view, and option click to exit. I can also select one of these different smaller views or these boxes, these panels, and click the toggle maximize chart, which is right here. Lastly, here is the gear for us to really fine-tune our chart and the properties of everything, including our candles, the colors of the candles, how they work, our time zone, the status line, if we want to see the symbol description up at the top, if we want to see the OHLC values, if we want to know the bar change values, if we want to hide or show the buy sell buttons, indicator titles, everything that we may want to see is up here. Our scales, which are here on the right or on the left, depending where you want to see it, will do lots of things. Things like telling us our symbol name value, giving us other information regarding our last price, indicator names. If we are using an indicator, this way we can learn how the indicator works and what values we're looking at for that indicator. There's a lot of different things to look at here. In appearance, you can get very granular as far as changing the colors of the background, the vertical grid lines, session breaks, texts, watermarks, all those kinds of things. Finally, you can use TradingView for trading, although I do not, but there are some brokers that connect with it, as well as how you want to show events, which would show up on the bottom for things like Forex trading and for stocks. Again, if you have preferences for how you want to show data, you can save it as a template, and you click Save As, and you can save it as my fancy template, and then you're set to go. I haven't really done anything, so I'm not going to save anything. These last two are very simple. We have full screen mode, which makes it bigger. And if I want to exit full screen mode, just press the escape button and then the share button, or also Alt S. By sharing this, I can copy the URL or save the image as a PNG file. And this will allow me to share it with others. Maybe I have drawings, maybe I want to see what someone else thinks of a chart that I'm looking at. This is very useful for that. I can also tweet it directly to Twitter if there's something I really want to share about this chart. I told you there was a ton of great stuff here on TradingView, and we've only covered one section. In the next step, we're going to be breaking down the left-hand bar side, which has a ton of really useful drawing tools that we just got to cover in the next step. So if you're ready, stay tuned. Here it comes.